Hello everyone, my name is David Luchford and welcome to lesson 45 of my Ancient Greek course. In today's lesson, we're going to be learning about adjectives in us, ea, u. But before we do that, let's take a look at my virtual sets of shelves. If we do that, we shall see that recently I have acquired a big, beautiful, brand new set of shelves. Check out that set. What a wonderful set of shelves. Just like all of my other sets, we have here a wonderful set of shelves. And you can see that this new wonderful set of shelves has been filled with an astonishing amount of amphorae. Because recently, someone has supported my channel by buying 3 virtual amphorae. Roman K has supported my channel by buying an incredible 11 virtual amphorae. Someone else, also named Someone, has supported my channel by buying 5 virtual amphorae. And a Yui has bought me a staggering 20 virtual amphorae. So many that I had to put up another shelf next to this beautiful set of shelves to accommodate them all in one place. Furthermore, Oleg has bought me a virtual amphora, and his name reminds me of a song. And Francesco has bought 4 virtual amphorae to support the channel, and Raymond J has bought 3 virtual amphorae to support my channel. So, to both of the someones, to Roman K, to Iui, to Ola, to Francesco, and to Raymond, I wish to say a huge thank you. I greatly appreciate all of the support, and I'm incredibly encouraged by it. Thank you all very much. And a big thank you to everyone who has supported my channel in the past also. I'm so grateful for all of your support, and I shall never forget it. What's more, I'm also grateful for your likes, your comments, and your subscriptions. So do be sure to like the video if you enjoy it or find it useful, to comment on it if you have anything to say about it, and to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. And in case you were wondering, our seasonal shelf is currently occupied by a picture of a spring bunny, because we are now in spring, ladies and gentlemen. The sun is shining here in the UK, as you can see, in Cambridge at least. The weather is improving, things are looking up, at least in terms of the weather. Now, if this lovely weather has inspired you to be particularly generous and to support my channel financially, then you can do that at the link in the description below by buying me a virtual amphora or virtual amphorae. And if you would like your virtual amphora or virtual amphorae to be customized, like Roman K has had his customized here, that is, if you want the color changed or something like that, then please do write the request in your message and I shall see what I can do. But for now, let's talk about adjectives in us, ea, u. That kind of rhymed with what I just said. Look at that, I'm a poet, but I did not know it. Anyway, so far, with regard to third declension adjectives, we have learned about adjectives in on, like a eudaimon, for example, and adjectives in s, like aleates, for example. Those are the 2 kinds of third declension adjectives that we've learned about so far. Another type of third declension adjectives is adjectives in us, ea, u. These adjectives have 3 sets of forms, as 2-1-2 adjectives do. This makes them stand out from the other types of third declension adjectives because adjectives in on and ess are to termination. You will recall that both of those kinds of adjectives, those in on and those in ess, have one set of forms for agreeing with masculine or feminine nouns and a second set of forms for agreeing with neuter nouns. They just have two sets of forms or two sets of endings. That's why they're called to termination. But the first sort of adjectives that we learned about were 2-1-2 adjectives, and they have a set of forms for agreeing with masculine nouns, a set of forms for agreeing with feminine nouns, and a set of forms for agreeing with neuter nouns. They have a masculine set of endings, a feminine set of endings, and a neuter set of endings. Adjectives in us, ar, u are the same. They have three sets of forms, a masculine set, a feminine set, and a neuter set. And that makes them different from the other third declension adjectives which we've learned about. Now, our paradigm for adjectives in us, ar, u is going to be the word glucose, which means sweet. And it is related to the word glucose in English. Glucose is a sugar, and sugar is sweet. So glucose is going to be our paradigm for adjectives in us, ar, u, meaning that if we learn how glucose declines, you can see its declension on the screen, then we shall know how all other adjectives in us, ar, u decline. So we can learn the endings of glucose to learn how all adjectives in us, ar, u change their endings. And I have some good news for you, ladies and gentlemen. But before we get to that, let's go through the forms of glucose. In the masculine, it goes glucose, glucune, glucaos, glucay, glucu, glucase, glucase, glucaon, glucasin. In the feminine, it goes glucea, glucaon, glucaas, glucai, glucai, glucaas, glucaon, glucais. And in the neuter, it goes glucu, glucu, glucaos, glucay, glucaa, glucaa, glucaon, glucasin. Now, my good news, ladies and gentlemen, is that if you have learned the third and first declensions, then you will already know all of these endings. Because in the masculine, the endings used are the same as those of a 3e noun of the second kind. That is, the kind that ends in us in the nominative singular, like presbus, meaning old men, or in the plural, ambassadors. Now, in the masculine, glucose and all other adjectives in us, ar, u decline exactly like presbus, except in one place. That is, in the genitive singular. So I'm going to put an asterisk next to 3e us to signify that there is one exception to the endings being the same. Because if we think about it, presbus declines as follows. It goes presbus, presbune, presbeos, presbe, presbu. So the difference is presbus would have eos in the genitive singular, not eos. I did say when I taught you about 3e nouns that there, the os, the usual masculine third declension genitive singular ending lengthens to os when it's added to the stems of those nouns, which do end in epsilon, as the third declension forms of adjectives in us, er, u do as well. That is, the forms in the masculine and the neuter, which use third declension endings. They have stems in epsilon too, but the difference is here the os that's added to that stem does not lengthen to os as it does in the declension of a 3e noun like presbus. It just stays as os in the declension of adjectives in us, er, u. But all of the other endings in the masculine are exactly the same as those of a 3e noun of the second kind, like presbus. What about the feminine endings? You have seen these before also. Well, you have if you've learned the first declension, because these feminine endings are the same as those of a 1b noun. A noun like kora, for example, meaning land or country. If you know how kora declines, then you will know how an adjective in us, er, u declines in the feminine. But one difference to note is that adjectives in us, er, u in the feminine have that diphthong a before the endings. So we do need to remember that we haven't just got a, an, as, I, as in the declension of a 1b noun. We've got ea, aeon, eas, ai. So we've got that diphthong a that's added before the 1b endings. One other small difference is none of the adjectives in us, er, u will have a long alpha in the feminine nominative singular or feminine accusative singular, whereas most 1b nouns do have a long alpha in those two forms. That's a smaller difference. It looks the same visually when you're reading Greek. This, by the way, this symbol that I've drawn here, this bend, is called a breve. It indicates that the vowel is short. What about the neuter endings of adjectives in us, er, u? Well, you also know these endings, ladies and gentlemen, if you've learned the third declension, because the neuter endings are the same as those of a 3f noun like ustiu, meaning city. If you know how ustiu declines, then you know how an adjective like glucose declines in the neuter. But, ladies and gentlemen, before you note that down, you must note that there are two differences. The endings are not exactly the same as those of ustiu because there are two key differences. The first of which is the same as in the masculine. In the genitive singular of the neuter, we have eos, but in the declension of a noun like ustiu, we have eos with an omega rather than an omicron. So note that we have that os rather than os. Okay, that's one difference. The second difference is in the nominative and accusative plural. Because in the nominative and the accusative plural of a noun like ustiu, we have er, instead of ea. Because in the declension of a noun like ustiu, that epsilon in the oblique stem contracts with alpha to make eta. That contraction does not happen here though. Instead, we've got ea. So that is the second difference between the neuter forms of an adjective in us, er, u and the forms of a 3f noun like ustiu. Apart from that though, all of the other endings are the same because it goes astiu, astiu. The genitive would be asteos rather than asteos, but then it's aste. It would be aster, aster rather than astea, astea. But then the genitive plural is asteon, and the dative plural is astesin. So the endings are the same, except for the genitive singular and the nominative and accusative plural. Anyway, if you would like to note down the declension of glucose with my notes, then please do pause the video now and note it down. But if you would like to note it down without my notes, please do pause the video and do that now. In any case, you should have now noted down the declension of glucose for it to serve as your paradigm for adjectives in us, er, u. If you know how glucose declines, then you know how all adjectives in us, er, u decline. Okay, before we do some practice with adjectives in us, er, u, we need to meet some more adjectives in us, er, u. The first of these is batus, meaning deep. Batus gives us the word bathymetry. Bathymetry is the measurement of the depth of oceans, rivers, and lakes. And the bathy part comes from batus, meaning deep. So if you can remember that bathymetry is about the depth of oceans, rivers, and lakes, then you can remember that batus means deep. I think I used to make the personal link that if you transliterate the first three letters, you get bath, and you might wrung yourself a deep bath. Now that's not an actual link. We don't actually get the word bath from batus, but it's a personal link that might help you to remember the meaning deep. Next, we have barus, meaning heavy or weighty. Barus is linked to the word barometer in English. A barometer measures the air pressure, or literally the heaviness or the weight of the air or the atmosphere. So, barus means heavy or weighty. Bradus, however, means slow. We get some medical terms like bradycardia from bradus. Bradycardia is where your heart beats too slowly. Cardia means heart in ancient Greek. Next we have brachus, meaning short. Now, dogs can be described as brachycephalic if they have a short face, like a pug. It literally means that they have a short head, because brachus means short and kephaler means head, which you will know if you've watched my video on the external body parts in ancient Greek. Next we have hairdeus, meaning pleasant. This gives us words to do with pleasure that have H-E-D at the start, because if we transliterate the first two letters of this word, we get H-E-D. So, for example, hedonism or hedonism is the view that pleasure is the good, that goodness is pleasure. The best life is the most pleasant life. And that word hedonism comes from hairdeus, or it's linked to it at any rate. Next we have terlus, meaning female or feminine. When I say that it means female, bear in mind that's female as an adjective. So we're not speaking about a female, we're speaking about female as a describing word. So for example, the female form. There, female is an adjective as opposed to a noun. Now, terlus gives us some obscure scientific terms like
Thelytiki. Thelytiki is a kind of parthenogenesis where the offspring are exclusively female. Parthenogenesis comes from parthenos and genesis, meaning virgin and birth, respectively, and it's where the egg develops an embryo without fertilization. Anyway, thelytiki is a type of parthenogenesis where that happens and the offspring are exclusively female. Thelytiki comes from telos, meaning female, and tokos, meaning birth.
the next adjective is oxeus, meaning sharp, shrill, or piercing. This gives us the prefix oxy in English, as in the word oxygen. Now, oxygen has a strange etymology. Literally, oxygen means producing acidity, because oxeus means sharp, but it can also mean acidic, because acidic things have a sharp taste. So the oxy part in oxygen means acidic, literally sharp, and the gen part is to do with production or birth. So oxygen is literally producing acidity, producing something acidic or producing something sharp. Now, why oxygen has that etymological meaning, I'm not certain, and I think it's a long and complicated story, but you can find out and share it in the comments below. Now, a word that might help us to remember the meaning better is the word oxymoron. An oxymoron is a phrase which is contradictory and therefore absurd because it's contradictory. So, for example, an oxymoron would be a wise fool. That's an oxymoron. Or a married bachelor. That's an oxymoron. Now, oxymoron comes from oxeus, meaning sharp, and moros, meaning stupid. In the word moron, it's in the neuter, so it literally means a sharp, stupid thing. That is something that is pointedly stupid. It's stupid on the face of it, like saying a wise fool, for example. Finally, we have the adjective tachus, meaning quick or swift.
Or fast. You could alternatively say fast, since that means the same thing as quick.
This gives us medical terms that are prefixed with tachy, like tachycardia. Tachycardia is where your heart beats too quickly. So we've talked about tachycardia from tachus and bradycardia from bradius. Two opposite heart conditions, but both pertaining to the speed or lack thereof of the heart. Anyway, please do pause the video and make sure that you've got these adjectives noted down. Now we are about to do exercise 1, but before we go on to exercise 1, I just want to remind you of the fact that there is a unique masculine vocative singular ending for adjectives in us, ea, u, but as I haven't listed any other distinct vocative forms, all of the other vocative forms would be identical to the nominative forms. So, for instance, the feminine vocative singular would also be glucea. The neuter vocative singular would also be glucu. So that's something to bear in mind when it comes to identifying the gender, case, and number of adjectives in us, ea, u. Having said that, exercise 1 asks you to state the gender, case, and number of the adjectives on the screen. So here, you need to look at the endings and you need to state all of the possibilities with regard to the gender, case, and number of these adjectives. Do bear in mind that for most of these, there are multiple possibilities. So state all of the possibilities that you can think of. Please do pause the video and state the gender, case, and number of these adjectives, listing all possibilities. Okay, to go through the answers. Number 1, bracheos is masculine or neuter genitive singular. Number 2, tachyu is neuter nominative or accusative or vocative singular or masculine vocative singular. Number 3, glukun is masculine accusative singular. Number 4, telei is feminine nominative plural. Number 5, bates is masculine nominative accusative or vocative plural. Number 6, herdesin is masculine or neuter dative plural. Number 7,
Oxeon
is feminine accusative singular. And finally, number 8, bareon is masculine or neuter genitive plural. So these are the answers that you should have got. If you have any questions about this, please do post them in the comments below. Let's now go on to exercise 2. Here I've created 6 Greek sentences for you to translate into English. Each of these sentences uses 1 or 2 adjectives in us, ea, u. I have put 3 of these sentences on the first slide here, and there are a lot of words in the word bank. I do realise that we have met the adjective makros before, but we've met it as meaning long. It can also mean tall, and in this instance it is meaning tall, so that's why I've specified that here. Anyway, please do pause the video and translate the first 3 Greek sentences, which are on the screen now. And now please pause the video once again and translate the last 3 Greek sentences, which are now on the screen. Okay, let's now go through the answers. Number 1 is brachiosaner hypotoi makroi dendroi estin. Idou xipos oxu eche. You should have translated this one as, a short man is under the tall tree. Look, he is holding a sharp sword. You could have said, he has a sharp sword, because echor can be either have or hold. And to go through why it means this, brachius aner is a short man in the nominative singular. We say a because we don't have the definite article before it. A short man. Then hypotoi makroi dendroi is a prepositional phrase. Hypo means under or beneath or below. It's where we get the prefix hypo from in English. And here it's governing the dative, letting us know the position of something. And the thing that's in the dative is toi makroi dendroi. The noun here is dendron, meaning tree. And the adjective that's sandwiched in between the definite article and the noun is makros, which in this context means tall. So, a short man under the tall tree, estin. Estin is he, she, or it is. The short man is in the nominative, and so we would say a short man is under the tall tree. Idou. Idou means look or behold. Xipos oxu eche. Eche means he, she, or it has or holds or is holding. And xipos means sword. Now, xipos is a 3C noun, so it ends in os in both the nominative singular and the accusative singular.
Here, it must be in the accusative.
Because there's no way we can think of the sword as being in the nominative here. It wouldn't make any sense to say the sword is holding or the sword has. The sword has what? It's got to be in the accusative. It's got to be he has or he holds or is holding. That is the short man from the previous sentence. And it's not just any old sword that he's holding. It's a xipos oxiu. Oxius means sharp. And here it's neuter accusative singular agreeing with xipos. So this means he is holding a sharp sword. I say a sharp sword because there is no definite article with the noun. Number 2 is hoi mentoxeutai esitaches, hoi de hoplitai brades. You should have translated this one as, the archers are quick, but the hoplites are slow. Now you could have said swift or fast instead of quick, and you could have rendered this contrast with a word other than but. You could have said however, for example, because we do have a men de contrast here. Literally, on the one hand, the archers in the nominative, AC, are taches, quick or swift or fast. On the other hand, hoi hoplitai, the hoplites, then we don't have a verb before the adjective, so we have to understand the same verb as before, AC. On the other hand, the hoplites are brades, slow. So we've got this contrast between the swift archers and the slow hoplites. A hoplite, as I put in the word bank, was a heavily armed foot soldier or infantryman. Thirdly, we have hotales ta astra talmazde, ton menun uranon anablepe, eis debatun botron eis pipde. And you should have translated this one as, Thales is amazed by the stars. So he looks up at the sky, but he falls into a deep pit. Now you could have said a deep hole rather than a deep pit. And you could have said heaven instead of the sky. And you could have said wonders at the stars rather than is amazed by the stars. And you could have just said stars in general if you took ta as indicating a general class here. Now, we know that it means this because Thales is in the nominative at the start. Now, Thales was the first Greek philosopher. He famously thought that everything is ultimately water, or that water is the origin, the originating principle of all things. And there is a famous anecdote about him being so fascinated by the heavens that he fell into a well or pit, as recorded in Plato's dialogue, the Theaetetus. It's a classic story of an absent-minded intellectual. Somebody that's so preoccupied with intellectual matters that they don't see what's right in front of them. And I've rendered that story in the sentences here. So, Thales is in the nominative. He's doing the action. Ta astra means the stars. The stars must be in the accusative plural here because there's no way to construe them as being in the nominative plural. Talmazdor is the verb to wonder at or to be amazed by. So this says Thales is amazed by the stars. The verb ends in a because he is amazed by the stars, namely Thales. Then we have ton men un uranon anablepe. Men here is setting up a contrast with the de in the following clause. We have a men de contrast. Un is a particle meaning therefore or so. The verb here is anablepe. Anablepor is a compound verb meaning to look up at. It comes from blepor, which means look at, and ana, meaning up. So, he looks up at, and the thing in the accusative is ton uranon, the sky, or we could say heaven. So, we've got therefore, or so. On the one hand, he looks up at heaven. Then we have de, on the other hand, ace, into, batun botron, a deep pit or a deep hole. Here it's in the accusative following ace, which governs the accusative. So this means, on the other hand, into a deep hole, ace pipte. Ace piptor means fall into, piptor means fall, ace means into. So, on the other hand, he falls into a deep hole or a deep pit. Now, I've rendered that on the one hand, on the other hand contrast with the word but. Now note that the definite article going with uranon is separated from it by two words, namely two particles. Particles, post-positive particles that is, do often get in between a definite article and its noun. Number 4 is dia ti porei den te leones te da honeanias, meaning, why is the young man wearing female clothing? We know that it means this because diati is why, porei is he, she, or it wears, then teleon esteta is literally the female or feminine, or perhaps you could say women's here, clothing, and it's in the accusative because it's the thing being worn. Then we have honeanias, the young man, in the nominative at the end, so he's doing the action. Why is the young man wearing, or why does the young man wear, female clothing? Now, I didn't include the word the in my translation because the Greeks do sometimes use the definite article to refer to something in general where we wouldn't in English. So I've taken this as being about him wearing women's clothes in general rather than a specific set of women's clothes. But you could have said the female clothing if that's the way you interpreted it. Fifthly, we have the sentence ho angelos apo ton oxeon alalon ton stratioton apo peuge, meaning, the messenger runs away from the soldiers' piercing battle cries. You could have said war cries rather than battle cries, and you could have said shrill rather than piercing, and you could have said flees from instead of runs away from. You could have said is running away or is fleeing from as well. Now, why does it mean this? That's because we have the messenger in the nominative, so he's doing the action. Then we have a prepositional phrase, apo ton oxeon alalon. Apo governs the genitive, which is why the prepositional object is in the genitive, and it means away from. So, away from ton oxeon alalon. And alaler is a battle cry or a war cry. It's named that because that's how it apparently sounded. Alale! Like that, I guess. Now, it's not just any old war cry we've got here. For one thing, we've got war cries in the plural because ton alalon is genitive plural, but we've also got an adjective going with the war cries, namely oxeon. They are piercing or shrill war cries. Now this phrase is in the genitive because of the fact it's the prepositional object of apo. So this means the messenger, away from the piercing or shrill war cries. Then we have another genitive though. ton stratioton. This is the soldiers in the genitive plural. So this must mean of the soldiers. We have a plain deployment of the genitive. We're being told whose war cries they are, namely the war cries of the soldiers. Then we have the verb apopeuge, which is a compound from apo, meaning away from, and peugor, meaning to flee or to run away. And the thing that the messenger is running away from is specified in this prepositional phrase. So, this was the messenger runs away from the shrill or piercing battle cries of the soldiers. Now, rather than saying of the soldiers, I've used S apostrophe, but you could have said of the soldiers if you wanted to. Sixthly, we have Idu ho iskuros hipeius dois bradesin hoplitais akolute. You should have translated this one as, look, the strong horseman is accompanying the slow hoplites. You could have said is following or follows or accompanies instead of is accompanying. Now, why does it mean this? Well, idu means look or behold. Then we have the strong horseman in the nominative case. Following that, we have tois bradesin hoplitais, meaning the slow hoplites, and here they're in the dative plural. When we look at the verb, we realise why they're in the dative plural, because the verb is akolute, meaning he, she, or it follows or accompanies. Now we know the strong horseman is the one doing the action, and the verb akoluteor takes its object in the dative case. That's why the slow hoplites are in the dative. So we have, look, the strong horseman follows or accompanies or is following or is accompanying the slow hoplites. Okay, I've now got exercise 3 for you here. This asks you to translate these English sentences which I've created into Greek. Please do pause the video and translate these English sentences into ancient Greek. Okay, to go through the answers. Number 1 is, the wine is sweet and pleasant. Here you should have put, ho oinos esti glucus kai herdus. Now the reason you should have put this is, the word for wine is oinos, it's a 2A noun, and we needed it in the nominative singular, because it's the subject of the verb to be. Now the word for is in ancient Greek is esti, which can be estin, but here it's followed by a word beginning with a consonant, and so we don't need movable nu. In fact, we shouldn't have movable nu there. So, ho oinos esti is the wine is. Then we want to say sweet and pleasant. Now, oinos is a masculine noun, and with the verb to be, both the subject and the complement go in the nominative case. Moreover, since oinos is singular, we need the adjectives to be singular. So the adjectives need to be masculine, nominative, singular. And that's why we said glucus, kai means and, herdus, for sweet and pleasant. And here is a lovely illustration of that sentence. Ho oinos esti glucus kai herdus. The wine is sweet and pleasant. Secondly, we have, the slave is carrying a heavy sword for the master. Here you should have put something like, ho doulos xipos bari doi despotei pere. Now, I say something like this because you could have had the units of this sentence in various orders. By units, I mean the definite article and noun combination of hodoulos. You could have had this in a different place. And the adjective and noun xipos bari. You could have had bari on either side of xipos, and you could have had that phrase anywhere in the sentence. Same with the definite article plus noun here, and same with the verb. There are some restrictions on Greek word order, but it's generally very flexible. However, to write this sentence in Greek, you did need the slave in the nominative singular. Then you needed xipos barou for a heavy sword. You could have had barou on either side of it, but these are the endings that we needed because xipos is a 3C noun. The ending os is therefore both the nominative singular ending and the accusative singular ending. We have it in the accusative singular here since it's the object of the verb. It's the thing that's being carried. Barou must agree with xipos, meaning that it must be in the same gender, case, and number as xipos. Since xipos is neuter accusative singular, barou is also neuter accusative singular. If we want to say for the master, then we need to put the master in the dative case, since the dative case means to someone or for someone when it's being used with its basic meaning. Therefore, we put toi despote to mean for the master. The master there is in the dative singular. Finally, pere is he, she, or it carries, or is carrying. We use the ending a because one person from a third person perspective is doing the action. If we were to replace the slave with a pronoun, we would say he, and we know that a is the he, she, it person ending. Thirdly, we have the sentence, the sailor always speaks to a short woman. Here you should have put something like, Chonautes barachea gunaiki ai lege. You could have had the units of this sentence in a different order, but you did need the sailor in the nominative singular. You needed brachea gunaiki to mean to a short woman. You could have had the adjective on either side of the noun though. However, you did need these endings because we needed the word woman in the dative singular, and there it looks like gunaiki. That's the dative singular form of guna. And guna is a feminine noun. So, since we have a feminine dative singular noun, we need the feminine dative singular form of the word short, which is usually brachus in the masculine nominative singular.
Here, though, it's bracheai,
because that is the feminine dative singular form, which we need to make the adjective agree with the noun that it's going with. The word for always is I, and the verb that we want is speaks, which is lege. In particular, lege is he, she, or it speaks. We say that because the sailor, if we were to replace him with a pronoun, we would say he. We've got one person from a third person perspective here, so that's why we use the third person singular person ending. I should mention that we put the woman in the dative because she's the one that's being spoken to. She is the recipient of the speaking. She's the indirect object, so that's why she goes in the dative. Fourthly, and finally, we have the sentence, the Athenian triremes are both strong and fast. Here you should have said, Hai Atenai trieres eisin iskurai tekai tachei. Now we know that we should say this because the Athenian triremes are the subject of the verb to be. They therefore need to be in the nominative case. And they need to be plural since there's more than one trireme here. We've got triremes. Now the triremes in the nominative would be hai trieres, but they're not just any old triremes, they're the Athenian triremes. The adjective aternaios means Athenian, but we need the feminine nominative plural form of that adjective for it to agree with trieres, which is also feminine nominative plural. I've deployed it via the sandwich construction, but you could have put it in the repeated article construction too. Either way, we needed the ending I because the adjective is a 2-1-2 adjective.
And I, that is alpha iota, is the feminine nominative plural ending for 2-1-2 adjectives.
So, Hai Athenai trieres is the Athenian triremes. Esin means they are. Here I included movable new because the next word begins with a vowel. Iskurai is the feminine nominative plural form of iskuros, meaning strong. We need the feminine nominative plural form because with the verb to be both the subject and the complement go in the nominative, that's why we need it in the case it's in. But the reason we need it to be feminine and plural is because trieres is feminine and plural. The noun that it's describing is feminine and plural. And the same applies with regard to the adjective tachei. That's also the feminine nominative plural form of the adjective. There, the adjective being used is tachus, meaning swift or quick or fast. Now, we didn't just say that the Athenian triremes are strong and fast, we said they are both strong and fast. To say that, you could have said te kai, like I have here. We learned about that construction in my video on particles working together. Or you could have said kai kai. You could have said kai is kurai, kai tachei. Because that also means both something and something. Okay, let's now summarize our learning for lesson 45. Today we have learned that the third type of third declension adjectives is adjectives in us, ea, u. We've learned that these adjectives use the endings of 3 e nouns of the second kind in the masculine, 1 b nouns in the feminine, and 3 f nouns in the neuter. Except for the facts that in the masculine, the genitive singular is eos rather than eos. In the feminine, a is added between the stem and the endings, hence ea. And in the neuter, the genitive singular is eos and the nominative/accusative plural is ea rather than er. So those are the differences between the endings used in the declension of an adjective in us, ea, u, and the endings used in the declension of 3 nouns of the second kind and 1 b nouns and 3 f nouns. In addition, we have learned 9 new adjectives today, and all of them are adjectives in us, ea, u. What's more, we have learned 4 new verbs, 3 of which are compound verbs. Moreover, we have learned 7 new nouns. With that said, let me say thank you very much for watching the video. I have put a frog on the screen to brighten your day, and we might describe this frog as follows. Homen batrachos ton muion peinai, haide muiai eisi daches. Meaning, on the one hand, the frog hungers for flies. On the other hand, flies are quick. So the frog is hungry for flies, but flies are quick or fast or swift. So he's got a challenge, he's got to catch that fly before it gets away. Now, in case you were wondering about the vocab there, a muia is a fly, it's a 1b noun, and the verb peinaor is to hunger for something. The thing that you hunger for goes in the genitive. Hopefully his hunger is satiated. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you very much once again for watching the video. Please do like it if you enjoyed it. Please do subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. And please comment if you have anything to say about the video. For now though, I shall see you again next time.